For centuries, Rome stood as the most powerful empire the world had ever known. From the cold forests of northern Europe to the scorching deserts of North Africa, its banners flew over lands connected by thousands of miles of roads, bridges, ports, and cities. Every new conquest strengthened the empire, bringing unimaginable wealth, precious metals, fertile farmland, and millions of new citizens under Roman rule. To those living inside its borders, Rome appeared unstoppable. Its armies were disciplined, its engineers built wonders that seemed impossible, and its laws shaped daily life across 3 continents. Traders crossed the Mediterranean carrying grain from Egypt, olive oil from Hispania, silk from the East, and wine from Italy. Every road eventually led to Rome, and every marketplace trusted the same currency. At the heart of this vast economic machine stood a small silver coin known as the denarius. More than just money, it represented stability, confidence, and the promise that every transaction would hold its value tomorrow just as it did today. Farmers accepted it without hesitation. Soldiers proudly earned it through their service. Merchants relied on it to conduct business across thousands of kilometers without fear. For generations, that trust helped transform Rome into one of the greatest civilizations in human history. Wealth flowed freely. Commerce expanded, and the empire continued to grow stronger with every passing decade. But history has a habit of hiding its greatest turning points beneath the surface. Long before the armies weakened, long before the borders collapsed, long before the empire itself disappeared, an invisible crack had already begun to spread through the very foundation of Rome. And it all began with a single silver coin. The silver coin that held Rome together was called the denarius. Introduced more than 2 centuries before the birth of Christ, it became far more than a simple piece of silver. It became the economic language of an empire that stretched across continents. Whether you were a farmer harvesting wheat in Egypt, a merchant trading spices in Syria, or a blacksmith forging tools in Gaul, the denarius carried the same meaning everywhere. Its true value was never measured only by the silver it contained. Its greatest strength was something far more powerful: trust. Every Roman citizen believed that the coin in their hand would still be accepted tomorrow, next month, and even years into the future. That confidence encouraged people to save, to invest, to trade, and to build businesses that connected distant provinces into one enormous economy. Roman soldiers marched thousands of kilometers knowing their wages would arrive in denarius. Merchants loaded entire ships with grain, wine, marble, glass, and olive oil, because they trusted every port across the Mediterranean would recognize the same currency. Families planned their future with confidence, believing that the value they earned through hard work would not disappear overnight. The denarius quietly became one of the greatest inventions behind Rome's success. Not because it was made of silver, but because millions of people believed in what it represented. And as long as that belief remained unbroken, Rome continued to prosper. But trust is one of the hardest things to build, and one of the easiest things to destroy. Soon, the empire would make a decision that seemed harmless at first, a decision that would slowly change the value of every coin in circulation, without most people even realizing it. For generations, Rome's economy had grown stronger with every new conquest. Every victorious campaign brought fresh supplies of silver, gold, fertile land, and millions of new taxpayers into the empire. As long as Rome continued to expand, its financial system appeared almost unstoppable. Success seemed to finance even greater success. But no empire can expand forever. By the 3rd century, Rome had reached a turning point. The borders stretched farther than ever before. Defending thousands of kilometers of frontier required enormous armies. New fortresses had to be built. Roads demanded constant maintenance. Public buildings, aqueducts, and cities consumed vast amounts of money simply to keep the empire functioning. At the same time, civil wars became more frequent. Emperors rose and fell with alarming speed. Each new ruler promised higher military salaries in exchange for loyalty. More soldiers had to be recruited. More fortifications had to be constructed. More supplies had to be purchased. For the first time in centuries, Rome's expenses were growing faster than its income. The treasury that had once overflowed with silver slowly began to empty. The government faced an impossible choice: raise taxes and risk public unrest, cut military spending and weaken the empire's defenses, or find another solution. At first, the answer seemed almost harmless. It required no new conquests, no painful reforms, no immediate sacrifices. All it required was changing the silver inside a single coin. No one could have imagined that such a small decision would begin one of history's greatest economic disasters. The solution Rome chose did not involve creating a completely new currency. That would have been too obvious. Instead, the government made a far more subtle decision. It began reducing the amount of silver inside each denarius while keeping the coin almost identical in appearance. To the ordinary citizen, nothing seemed different. The size remained the same. The emperor's portrait was still engraved on the front. The symbols of Roman authority were still proudly displayed. From the outside, it looked like the very same coin that had circulated for generations. But inside, everything had changed. Every new batch contained slightly less silver than the one before it. At first, the difference was so small that almost no one noticed. A fraction of silver removed here, a little more copper added there. The government could now produce more coins using the same amount of precious metal. It seemed like the perfect solution. The treasury appeared healthier. Soldiers could still be paid. Public projects continued, and for a brief moment it looked as though the crisis had been solved. But wealth cannot be created simply by producing more money. The value of a currency depends on something far greater than the metal it contains. It depends on the confidence of the people who use it, and confidence, once damaged, is almost impossible to restore. Without realizing it, Rome had planted the first seed of its own financial collapse. The consequences would not appear overnight, but they were already unavoidable. At first, the new coins caused almost no concern. Markets remained crowded. Merchants continued opening their shops every morning. Farmers brought fresh harvests into the cities, and caravans crossed the empire just as they had for generations. To the average Roman citizen, life appeared completely normal. The denarius still looked familiar. It carried the same portrait of the emperor. It weighed almost the same in the palm of a hand. It sounded nearly identical when dropped onto a marble counter. Nothing about its appearance suggested that anything had changed, and because nothing looked different, most people never questioned it. This is how trust slowly begins to disappear, not through panic, not through chaos, but through small changes that go unnoticed. With every new shipment of coins, a little less silver entered the economy. With every payment made to a soldier, with every tax collected by the government, with every purchase in the marketplace, the true value of the Roman currency quietly drifted farther away from the promise it once represented. Yet almost nobody realized what was happening. After all, the markets were still open, the roads were still busy, the empire still looked powerful. From the outside, Rome appeared as strong as ever. But beneath that image of stability, something invisible had already begun to spread, like a tiny crack inside a massive stone column. The damage remained hidden, until one day, it could no longer be ignored. At first, the changes were almost impossible to notice. A loaf of bread cost only a little more than it had the week before. A sack of grain required a few extra denarius. Olive oil, wine, clothing, and everyday goods slowly became more expensive, one small increase at a time. Most people blamed poor harvests. Others blamed dishonest merchants. Some believed the empire was simply going through a difficult season. Almost nobody suspected the currency itself. After all, the coin still looked exactly the same. But merchants were beginning to notice something that ordinary citizens could not. The silver content of the new denarius felt different. Experienced traders who handled thousands of coins every month realized that the new currency no longer carried the same intrinsic value as the older coins. Quietly, without making public accusations, they adapted. If the coin was worth less, they simply asked for more of them. Not because they wanted greater profits, but because they wanted to protect themselves from losing value. And so, prices began to rise. Not everywhere, not all at once, but slowly. Market by market, city by city, province by province. Every new transaction weakened confidence a little more. People still trusted Rome, they still trusted the emperor, but for the first time, they no longer trusted the money in their own hands. The empire had entered a dangerous cycle, a cycle where every new coin created even less confidence. And every loss of confidence demanded even more coins. Rome had crossed a line from which it would never fully recover. As confidence in the denarius continued to weaken, the Roman government faced an increasingly desperate situation. Prices kept climbing. Merchants demanded more coins for the same goods. The treasury struggled to keep pace with rising expenses, while soldiers, laborers, and government officials still expected to be paid on time. To the emperors, the solution seemed obvious. If there was not enough money, then more money had to be created. The imperial mints worked tirelessly. Day after day, thousands of new denarius coins poured into circulation, flowing from the treasury into marketplaces across the empire. For a brief moment, it appeared to work. Soldiers received their wages. Government projects continued. Markets remained open. Life carried on. But beneath the surface, something far more dangerous was happening. Every new shipment of coins made the existing currency slightly less valuable. Merchants noticed it first. Then money changers. Then traders traveling between provinces. They began raising prices even before receiving the new coins, expecting tomorrow's currency to be worth less than today's. Fear had entered the economy. People no longer spent money because they trusted it. They spent it because they feared waiting. Saving no longer felt wise. Holding on to silver no longer felt safe. the faster money entered circulation, the faster confidence disappeared. Rome had entered a vicious cycle. To solve inflation, it created even more inflation. And without realizing it, the empire was no longer controlling its currency. Its currency had begun controlling the empire. The effects of Rome's monetary crisis could no longer be hidden. What had once been an invisible economic problem was now part of everyday life. Families who had always been able to afford bread suddenly found themselves counting every coin before entering the marketplace. Merchants adjusted their prices almost daily, uncertain of what the next shipment of coins would actually be worth. A basket of grain that had been affordable only months before now required nearly twice as many denarius. Wine, olive oil, clothing, and even basic tools became increasingly difficult to buy. The problem was no longer the number of coins people possessed. It was what those coins could actually purchase. Ordinary citizens watched their savings slowly lose value. Years of hard work disappeared without warning. Some families rushed to spend their money as quickly as possible, fearing it would be worth even less tomorrow. Others stopped trusting coins altogether. Whenever possible, they exchanged grain for wine, olive oil for clothing, livestock for tools. Barter quietly returned to an empire that had once dominated the world's most advanced monetary system. The denarius still existed. The emperor's portrait still appeared on every coin, but its greatest strength had vanished: trust. And once trust disappears from an economy, every transaction becomes a negotiation. Every purchase becomes uncertain. Every citizen begins thinking only about surviving the next day. Rome's economic crisis was no longer confined to its treasury. It had entered every home, every family, and every marketplace across the empire. As Rome's economy continued to unravel, the crisis reached the institution that had built the empire itself. For centuries, Roman legions had been the most disciplined and respected military force in the known world. Their victories expanded the empire, protected its borders, and guaranteed the peace that allowed trade and prosperity to flourish. But armies cannot survive on reputation alone. They must be supplied, they must be equipped, and above all, they must be paid. As inflation accelerated, the government found it increasingly difficult to provide soldiers with wages that still held real value. Officially, every legionary received his salary. In reality, those coins bought less food, less clothing, and fewer necessities than ever before. Many soldiers watched the purchasing power of their earnings disappear month after month. Frustration quietly spread through the ranks. Veteran officers struggled to maintain discipline. New recruits questioned whether military service was still worth the sacrifice. Some demanded higher pay. Others deserted their posts in search of more secure lives beyond the frontier. The Roman army was still feared by its enemies. Its armor still shined beneath the sun. Its banners still flew proudly above every fortress. But beneath that proud appearance, the same invisible force that had weakened the economy was now weakening the empire's greatest weapon: trust. Without trust in their wages, without confidence in the future, even the strongest army in the world begins to lose its unity. Rome was no longer fighting only against foreign enemies. It had begun fighting against the consequences of its own decisions. History often remembers the fall of Rome as a story of barbarian invasions, collapsing frontiers, and the dramatic end of an empire. But those events were only the final chapter. The true collapse had begun decades earlier, quietly, almost invisibly, deep within the foundations of Roman society. It began when trust was exchanged for short-term solutions. When the value of money slowly disappeared, confidence disappeared with it. Merchants lost faith in the currency they accepted. Families watched years of savings lose their purchasing power. Soldiers received wages that no longer rewarded their service. Little by little, the invisible bond that connected millions of people across the empire began to break. Without trust, trade weakened. Without trade, prosperity faded. Without prosperity, the government struggled to protect its borders, support its people, and maintain the institutions that had once made Rome the envy of the ancient world. The empire was not destroyed by a single battle. It was weakened by thousands of decisions made over many decades. Each decision seemed small. Each compromise appeared temporary. Yet together they changed the course of history. The story of Rome is not simply about the past. It is a reminder that every civilization stands on foundations that cannot always be seen. Roads can be rebuilt. Walls can be repaired. Armies can be expanded. But once trust begins to disappear, recovering it becomes far more difficult than anyone expects. History rarely repeats itself in exactly the same way, but it often whispers the same warnings to those willing to listen. Perhaps that is why the fall of Rome still matters today. Not because an empire disappeared, but because the choices that destroyed it are choices every civilization must continue to face.